Welcome to the Mastering the Mind podcast, which is a BASES SEPAR Endorsed Resource. We have been invited to this year's 2021 DSEP conference to support the division with creating original content by interviewing a variety of conference speakers about their research and reflections. Today's interview is with Dr. Paula Watson, who is a senior lecturer in exercise and health psychology at Liverpool John Moores University.
Paula is also a BPS chartered psychologist and HCPC registered practitioner psychologist in sport and exercise. In this episode, Paula talked about the research she presented at the conference, which was titled The Potential for Supervised Practice at MSc Level, Reflections from the HERizon Physical Activity Intervention for Adolescent Girls. So let's welcome Paula to the podcast.
First one.
Okay, there we go. Well, we can all.
So where we like to start with our guests is for them to tell us a bit about themselves, so our listeners get to know you as well.
Yeah.
So talk us through your journey from maybe where you was growing up to where you are now. Any academic background, your teaching roles, your research. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
everything.
It's a bit of an open-ended question, so you take it where you like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, it's when you say going back to your childhood, I'm thinking. So I grew up and I wasn't a particularly sporty youngster, so I always feel a bit out of it at these sport-focused things. But I've always been very active.
Yeah.
My dad's a retired GP, and he was always very much about help me understand the importance of exercise and movement for your mental health.
Yeah.
And I think I just grew up, really kind of advocating that, shouting about that, and I got a bit into running a little bit and stuff in my teenage years. And then long story short, I came to study sports psychology at John Moores Uni. My undergrad was in psychology at York Uni. And I remember the main thing I learned during that year, I think, was that I didn't actually want to be a sport psychologist. I couldn't see myself fitting in with that culture, but I was really passionate about helping promote movement and the psychological influence on movement and physical activity. And I remember going to my first conference in that physical activity field and thinking, oh wow, there's all this research out there. It isn't just my dad saying it. There's actually some substance to this.
Some evidence.
Now that was nearly 20 years. It's 2004 when I graduated. So in those days, the pathways to becoming a sport and exercise psychologist didn't exist in the same way. I then got a job as a research officer. Essentially what I was doing for 8+ years was developing and running a family-based lifestyle weight management program.
Okay.
So, and through that time I did my PhD. I then got my HCPC registration through the grandparenting route, and I became a lecturer at John Moores University. Just last year, I've gone part-time in that role because to start my own applied exercise psychology company, because I'm really passionate about, I'm convinced there's a place for exercise psychology outside of academia. It's not really happening at the moment, but there's a lot of trainees coming through who are really interested in it.
Okay.
So hopefully that's the key relevant points at least.
Definitely. We do see a lot of elite, people that want to work in elite sports. We're having a conversation actually yesterday with one of the DSEP conference organizers, and she was saying it's heavily based on elite sports. We don't really attend to the exercise side, so it's really interesting that you have that interest as well. Nice to see.
And we did a couple of modules, so we went Liverpool University. And we did that exercises medicine module where we had to do an assignment where we had to veer away from exercise as medicine and not promote it as medicine, rather more like behavior change. So that was a really interesting and eye-opening assignment that we had to do. I really enjoyed it, to be fair.
Yeah, it was really good, really interesting. So the title of the kind of work you're presenting here is Reflections from the HERizon Physical Activity Intervention for Adolescent Girls. So what led you to this research?
So it's not actually research that I'm presenting. It is part of a research study. But what I'm presenting is to kind of share our experiences of bringing research, teaching and applied practice together. So the HERizon project is a randomized controlled trial that we've been running. So I'm one of the supervisors for a PhD student, Emma Cowley, who's been running this intervention. And it was during the COVID lockdown we were looking at ways that we could help adolescent girls in particular, because their activity levels are really low. There's a big drop off in adolescent years, and it affects girls more than boys. And obviously with the COVID lockdown as well, there are additional barriers. So essentially it was an online, just like you were saying there, a behaviour change, physical activity behaviour change intervention, where each girl was given, so it was for girls aged 13 to 16 in UK and Ireland, and each girl was given a physical activity mentor who would have a 15-minute call with her for a period of 6 weeks. There was then a break. She had a call at 9 weeks and then at 12 weeks. So that was one of the strands. Another element to it was live physical activity sessions, which Emma was running. And then there was, so there was a group with each of those, a combined group, and then there was a control group who just received a booklet with information. So that was the randomized controlled trial itself. Now, how we ran this is what I'm presenting on with some thoughts on, because we essentially ran this with MSc students as the behaviour change mentors, with stage 2 trainees, so professional doctorate students, and BASES SEPAR students as kind of senior mentors, and then myself and another colleague as HCPC registered psychologist supervising. So the presentation is about reflecting on our experiences and encouraging people to consider actually the value of these kind of hands-on placements at MSc, which is a bit different from what happens in a lot of places at the moment.
100%. Like on our masters, we wish we had some practical experience, because we find we're going into stage 2 quite like we're not sure how we're going to go about things. So definitely, I think that'd be super valuable for students to have that. Can you see a future within that being implemented into all MSCs in sports psychology, or even psychology?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, our MSc at John Moores Uni, we've had a placement module ever since I did it myself 18 years ago. But there's still a bit of it, it's a cloudy area. And the BPS, if you look in the BPS guidance, it's very much, which I agree with, stage 1 is about, the main primary purpose is upskilling in knowledge and understanding. But there's also an element of stage 1, as you said there, which is really important, about equipping you for the next stage, which is about understanding ethical, professional boundaries, starting to understand different approaches. You'll often learn about counselling skills approaches, but actually it's very difficult to really learn them without actually trying them out yourself. And the reason that I was keen to present on this, I think, because I supervise quite a lot of I supervise professional doctorate students at the stage 2 level, and also on the BASES SEPAR. And you're finding that if students, certainly if they haven't done a placement at all, or haven't had any one-to-one experience before you start, it can be really very daunting. And then you're suddenly on this stage 2, you're kind of under pressure you might be under financial pressure then as well. 100%. And you're out there to get out there and practice. And in a sense, it's less structured in that you're not seeing your supervisors and your staff that often as you are during MSc. So we kind of thought, well, it was a kind of win-win situation, because we needed people to deliver this intervention, but also we did it in a really structured, supervised way. So I was able to deliver training for all those MSc students. We had an intervention manual, so they had clear protocols. We had clear protocols about safeguarding mental health. And actually one of the biggest things and one of the most learning points for me when I got feedback from them is actually the students learning that things don't go to plan and what to do when things go wrong, and understanding what we mean by ethical scenarios. Because at the start, if we'd asked people, do you see any concerns about this and this, actually a lot of the students would be saying no. And so it's actually, to me, this is about preparing them for stage 2, so that now they're going in with their eyes open a bit more when you are put into that one-to-one situation for the first time. So I think there's real value in it if it's done. But what I'll share in the presentation, of course, as well, considerations for supervisors to be aware of and to make sure it is done in that structured, supervised way.
No, that'd be unreal. Like, we had a module at Loughborough, and it was like more, we were in a Zoom call first half because of COVID, and we were just doing it between like ourselves, where we'd hop in a call with like 3 of us, and then we'd just practice consulting with each other. But I didn't find like I got the necessary skills I weren't developing the necessary skills to go into stage 2. Like I don't feel any more confident than I did before I did that. So I definitely feel this is really valuable, and hopefully it does get implemented into all MSCs.
And also another thing, well, we've both done placements, but they weren't really sports psychology related. So having this kind of, experience is fantastic for students, learning the soft skills and counseling skills. And we like ours were more sports science based. So it's difficult, to get experience in sports psychology at that level, especially. So this kind of, it's fantastic. It's fantastic that you're doing this. So
yeah. What were the main lessons or outcomes you wanted to get out for the students? Like I saw on the brief for your study that there were some outcomes what you got. So things like improving their one-to-one counselling, develop a heightened ethical awareness, ability to critically reflect, increased competence to deal with unexpected situations. So were they sort of the main ones you wanted to get out?
Yeah, well, you've just summarised. But no, I think that was it. It's those kind of softer things. I don't like that term actually, but it's those things that they're less easy to measure per se. And it's exactly as I said before, that comment that I've learned that things don't go according to plan. And also I think the key thing, we made very clear in the training, any concerns at all with regards to safeguarding, we've talked about the signs and symptoms, but also mental health awareness. We had a screening because there was 80 girls on this, 80 participants who were seen across between these MSc students, and we didn't want to exclude people with mental health problems because, well, physical activity might be most beneficial for them, and there was no reason for us to exclude. However, we were very conscious of boundaries and making sure that we're not getting anyone in a situation where they're in that ethical conundrum of knowing, is this within my remit? How can I help this person? Could I do any more harm? So we asked them at the start when they signed up to, we asked the parents to say, are there any mental health concerns you'd like to raise with us? And I think out of the 80, there was about 8 girls who did that. And then all those individual girls, I had a Zoom call with the parents beforehand to assess the risk there, and often actually we'd assign those to one of the senior mentors, so one of the stage 2 mentors rather than the MSc. But actually what was really comforting for me as a supervisor, I saw the MSc students and the stage 2 trainees, because it was learning for them, progress as we went through, and actually being aware of, it's okay, speak to your supervisor if any concerns. Nothing is too trivial. You never know what, and actually I really saw that developing. And it's those kind of learning points, learning to recognize when something could be an ethical issue or a concern. And I think it was mainly that, but the other learning points I mentioned as well, there was value also for that middle level of the stage 2 trainees. So what we were able to do for the professional doctorate and SEPAR students is I also involved them in the training. So they were delivering some of that and could use it towards like their teaching competency. And for me, that was a big step, because I had to trust them to do this and step back and think it doesn't have to all be perfect. And it was a great learning experience for them. So they were facilitating small group reflection as well. And of course, as I say, it gave us a mechanism to deliver this intervention. We didn't have funding to deliver otherwise either. So there was kind of learning on all angles there, I think.
Okay. Upon reflection from like finishing this, are there any other skills you'd like to maybe that weren't brought out during that, that maybe you'd like to implement in future?
I think certainly there were things in my reflections that I could have done better, because as with everything, you're so time strapped, capacity is the issue, you're rushing into, you're doing what you can, but I certainly would have supported the senior activity mentors more, so the stage 2 trainees a bit more, in terms of them helping them understand their role in facilitating, because they were a bit in the middle of thinking, well, I'm feeling pressured that I've now got this senior title, but yet I'm still learning myself. So being clear to them about using supervision and actually I think also that's another thing in terms of structuring supervision and making sure I'd left it very much encouraging students to check in with me and get the one-to-one supervision, but some would do that more than others, and actually I'd make that more structured, for instance. And then the one other thing that surprised me, because it didn't come out till near the end actually that I heard was actually the MSc students talked about how exhausting they found this.
Oh, really?
And actually, you know, just I think better managing expectation, giving them that. We had a group reflection session every week, but because it was all online last year, it was all on Zoom. And when you were in that big group, sometimes it was difficult they did smaller group stuff, but when they're in the big group, sometimes it was difficult for people. Some people were more comfortable sharing than others. But actually, it didn't come out till after we'd stopped that formal reflection. I think they were discussing between themselves that actually, wasn't this really tiring? Did you know, I don't think anybody had the confidence to admit to anyone else because nobody else said it. But actually understanding how draining applied work can be, you know, everything you've got to think about, your planning, your reflection, the expectations and pastoral support in that sense, you know, in terms of encouraging self-care for the students themselves and well-being and managing the workload. I think I could certainly have done more in that sense and would be more aware of that if we were to do something similar again.
It's really good that you have those reflections to know what to do afterwards. But just to bring it back from the start, so I was really curious for our listeners, why is there this kind of drop off in physical activity in young girls or
okay, so it's really interesting. So Emma, the PhD student, she did some formative work to inform the intervention and some focus groups with girls about what's getting in the way of what their perceptions of physical activity and exercise were. And it's quite astonishing really for where we are in 2021, because a lot of the stuff they were saying, they really did feel that there was a gender bias still as well. So they felt like within their schools, it was seen as a good thing for boys to participate in sport, you know, even from their teachers and stuff. It was actively encouraged, whereas girls were promoted down the academic pathway. And there was also a cultural thing, you know, they were using comments like, well, girls, it's about putting your makeup on. And, you know, I'd never be seen riding my bike down the street and stuff. And that really got me thinking, because I was like, actually, you do very rarely see girls out on bikes. So there's a lot of kind of socio-cultural gender stuff there. But there were also things like, actually practical things like thinking about, I don't like feeling all sweaty if they put PE first thing in the day and there's no showers and those kind of things, which obviously affect girls and boys, but maybe girls are more self-conscious. And being self-conscious, that fear of judgment was a huge one. And you know, certainly something that can help. And we had all female mentors on this for that reason as well, because the importance of female role models being more comfortable in girls only groups as well. You know, that girls, they can feel more comfortable going along to sport or physical activity in girls only groups. So there's a lot of kind of hidden barriers there, which might be psychological, social, or bigger cultural factors as well.
What can be done to kind of resolve this issue? What do you say? I know it's a big question, but what are your kind of ideas of what can be done?
Well, it is a big question. And I think, as I say, there's multi-level barriers, so it probably requires a multi-level solution. That said, I mean, what I haven't talked about at all as well, from what we know so far, we haven't got all the results in from the randomized controlled trial yet, but we've got a lot of qualitative data in. And Emma's still analysing the results, but it was, from the feedback from the girls, it was hugely successful in terms of that support. We were coming from a self-determination theory approach, which was about encouraging them to develop an autonomous motivation for physical activity themselves. And it was really great when we had comments back that were organically suggesting that I now love exercise. I used to think it's something it was a chore, and you know, you're like, yes. So I think these kind of programs, and this showed us that actually that online support, these things can be done online as well, and it allowed us to reach a lot. So I think these kind of things can make some headway, but I think there's also a bigger kind of cultural agenda that which, you know, with gender equality and more role models, looking at how schools promote physical activity and making it fair. And so there's not an easy fix, unfortunately, but every small step helps.
We've had a few guests on our podcast, so Holly Bradshaw and Emily Borthwick, who really promote, you know, physical activity, and they go into schools and show, you know, just them showing up and showing their success is hugely inspiring for young girls. So we promote that a lot.
And a lot of what we promote as well is the SDT theory, like the autonomy, competence, and all that. Like that was heavily on our MSc as well. So yeah, we definitely feel like that's valuable. But no, thanks for sharing all that with us. Definitely feel like it's going to be of value to our listeners, and definitely some good clips in there as well. So yeah, no, thanks for sharing all that with us.
Yeah, there's all the kind of questions we had for you, and if you got anything to shout out, anything you'd like to share with us, now's your chance. Now's your
well, all I'd say actually, and I will probably say this again on I'm talking to you again about the presentation, but you know, for anyone that is interested in the exercise psychology, physical activity psychology, we've recently set up 4 of us have founded like an applied psychologists in physical activity network, which we've already got a lot of interest in it. We've just done a kind of voting for our first board and stuff, and we haven't started to promote it yet. So if anybody is interested in signing up for that and joining that network, because I know there's a lot of trainees is struggling to find those role models and where that support is, they can email us at that I can give you the to put in your
in the bio. We'll put
I mean, it's called Appen. It's Appen Community at gmail.com, or follow me on Twitter.
We'll put all your socials, everything, all the socials to Appen. So thanks so much for sharing that.